sitting. It's something that everybody does, sometimes more than others. There's a lot of research on sitting and what it sort of does to our brains and our body. So I'm going to talk through some of that, as well as some statistics about sitting. The time that a person spends sitting throughout the day can outweigh the benefits that are reaped from exercise. So I don't know if you've heard that phrase that sitting is the new smoking. And all the detrimental effects on our body, which I'm going to talk through from sitting for a prolonged period of time. And when I say prolonged periods, I'm talking more than like 6 hours a day, which we tend to kind of underestimate how much we're actually sitting because we don't realize commute time counts, sitting to eat meals counts, watching TV in the evening counts, sitting while you're talking on the phone counts, and all the time you spend at work. So that can easily add up. So sitting for more than 8 hours a day is associated with a 90% increase in type 2 diabetes, just in and of itself as its own factor. And those who sit the most, so meaning more than 8 hours a day, also have a 147% increased risk of a cardiovascular event, such as a heart attack or angina, compared to those who sit the least, which would be like less than 4 hours a day. And all-cause mortality, so dying for any reason, is increased by 50%. So that's all of your major diseases, basically. All of those are impacted by sitting. Sitting is a risk factor for all of those diseases, which can lead to death, premature death, let's say. Because obviously we're all going to die at some point. Okay. Sitting increases cancer rates. So lung cancer, uterine cancer, colon cancer. Those cancers in the lower part of the body also makes a lot of sense because when you're sitting, there's a lot of pressure on those parts of the body. Circulation can be reduced to those parts of the body, and that can also affect these disease processes. And unfortunately, research shows that maintaining a regular fitness regimen, so if you're a regular exerciser and even every day you exercise for 30 to 60 minutes, that is not enough to counteract the effects of sitting for more than 8 hours a day. So that 8 hours is a critical number. So some other studies looking at certain parts of the population, 1 in 4 white U.S. adults spends about 70% of their day, their waking hours, sitting. Only 30% in light activities, which is basically going to the bathroom, preparing a meal, things that you're not really having to exert yourself too much, but you are moving around at least a little bit. And little or no time in actual exercise, which exercise tends to be categorized as sort of planned physical activity, like you're setting aside that time to actually exercise. So there are ways to break up prolonged sitting with short bouts of light activity, which even just doing some of this light activity is very important in offsetting these detrimental effects from sitting.
So one question
Yes.
I have, because with the snow, and yesterday I was working from home,
Okay.
and I realized I do worse working from home because I get caught up into it more, and there's nobody that you're going down the hallway to talk to. Have you guys found that, because more and more people are working from their home, have you found that people are sitting more when they're working from their home?
Just anecdotal. I haven't seen any research about that, but that's something that I should look into. But just anecdotally, some people report that I don't have those other distractions that I have at work, but other people say I've got a lot more distractions at home. So I'm doing laundry, I'm cleaning, there are other things at home that you kind of intersperse throughout your day, so it actually can break up your work a little bit more. So, but I want to take a look at that and see if there's any research about that. So, like you said, if you're at work, ways breaking up with light activity is walking down the hall to speak with a coworker instead of emailing, or extending your walking distance during trips to the bathroom. So instead of taking the short route, go around the other way so that you're getting some extra steps in and some extra time being up and moving around. And standing or pacing when on the phone. Okay. So I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but because I'm going to get to some recommendations in a little bit. So we'll just leave that. Okay, so the average office worker sits for about 10 hours a day. Because if you figure you're at work for 10 hours, and you're sitting at for 8 hours, and you're sitting at your desk, and then if you have your hour lunch break, you're sitting to eat lunch. You're moving locations, but you're still sitting. So there's computer use, making calls, eating lunch, all that stuff at work. You eat breakfast sitting, you're sitting in your car, you're sitting all day, get back in your car to sit, get home and sit eating dinner, and then a lot of times the leisure activity in the evening is seated. Knitting, reading, watching TV, or tablet use. Experts say that you should start standing up at work for at least 2 hours a day. So, I mean, ideally, everybody has a treadmill desk, but that's expensive and ideal. Second place would be a standing workstation, which if you have a station that you can either, it's just a standing station or it can go from sit to stand, would be great.
Desk?
A treadmill desk is what it sounds like. There's a treadmill underneath your workstation. You walk slowly, so you're not like moving at a really big clip. You know, you're maybe walking at like 1.5 miles an hour. But you're still up and moving. So that would count as light activity. So now you're doing light activity while you're working instead of just sitting while you're working. And there's been research to see, well, does that reduce productivity? Does that reduce your attention to detail or attention sharing, memory, working memory, and things like that? And it actually doesn't. In some cases, it actually improves it because you've got that blood flow to your brain, blood circulating. When you sit, things just kind of, they don't stop, but they really slow down.
So people are making this personal investment, or are there companies that are saying we want more healthy workers, so
Both.
they're building that in?
Both. Obviously, the companies that are doing that have the money to spend on them.
Okay.
And not necessarily all of their employees have that. It would be like by special request or a medical need.
Mm-hmm.
More and more companies, though, are paying for stand-up workstations.
Yeah.
So whether it be a fancy schmancy sit-to-stand desk that's like automatic and then comes up and then comes down, or if it's something that's just a little bit more rudimentary and just kind of like a stack where you've got your computer and your laptop and then you just move it down here if you're going to sit. Mm-hmm. But more and more companies are investing in standing workstations for their employees. And a lot of people who are working from home are kind of coming up with their own standing workstation. So you want to start for at least 2 hours a day and then work your way towards 4. So if you're working an 8-hour day, you're at least cutting in half how many hours that you're standing. The average American just sits for about 8 hours a day, again, in whatever activity that is. And that's not even necessarily the office worker, but just the average American. Again, commute time while we're eating and leisure activity, we're not spending it doing physical activity, we're kind of lounging and sitting a lot. So this is a study that they actually did in children, but the same thing happens to the brain in adults. So they took a group of kids, they did EEG studies on them, and among other things, they looked at attention and memory and things like that, but they wanted to see what the brain activity was like after 20 minutes of sitting and 20 minutes of walking. And this is the difference. So these red colors kind of moving down towards the warm colors of the spectrum indicates higher activity, and this is lower activity. So you can see after just 20 minutes, your brain really does kind of start to shut down. And after walking for 20 minutes, it really lights up. So this is with kids. You imagine you sit them at a desk and they're expecting them to learn, and they're in the position that's going to keep their brain from functioning at its maximum. How much are they really going to retain? The same is true for adults, though. So if you're asking someone to be able to pay attention to detail and be alert and focused, after 20 minutes, that's going to start to go away. And I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, like when I was in school and studying, I'd have to get up. After about a half an hour, 45 minutes, I just couldn't anymore. I was really starting to shut down. And I'd have to get up and do something before I could come back and start to work. So there's a physiological reason for that. So after 30 minutes of sitting, and this is in adults, our metabolism slows down by 90%. So if weight management is an issue, you're not doing yourself any favors by just sitting. Enzymes that move your bad fat from your arteries to your muscles where it can get burned off slows down. So muscle activity is what's going to burn off a lot of this blood fat and blood glucose, blood sugar. So if you're not using your muscles, you're not going to burn that off. So it's going to accumulate in your bloodstream and then end up stuck to your arterial walls. That bad fat, which is cholesterol, is bad fat. And the muscles in your lower body are turned off. So the major muscles that are turned off are the ones that are having that pressure put on them, your glutes. And your glutes are the gluteus maximus, is appropriately named. It's the biggest muscle in the body, and it is very important for the health of your hips, your knees, your foot and ankle, your low back. So they're major players in how our bodies function, and we're basically just sitting on them and turning them off. And then it's not just that when we stand back up, they turn back on. Most times they kind of stay inhibited, especially if we're in a routine of sitting all the time. They just kind of stay inhibited. So then they're not working for us. After 2 hours, good cholesterol drops by 20%. So you're familiar with HDLs and LDLs and triglycerides and all of that. So your LDLs would be more of your HDLs would be more of your good cholesterol. So even just sitting, those are going to drop by 20% after 2 hours. So if you're putting in all this effort for lifestyle and health and even making dietary changes to try to help your cholesterol, if you're sitting all day, it's going to still alter your blood panel. Okay.
Can I just a quick question?
Sure.
So for the last slide where you had the after 2 hours good cholesterol drops 20%, was the good cholesterol, was the sitting like one of the leading causes of the drop in good cholesterol?
Yes, so that was its own factor.
Oh,
so
okay.
all of these studies, they're looking, they're doing statistical analysis that kind of takes out what a person's eating, whether or not they exercise. They're just looking at sitting as an independent factor in and of itself. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so some effects of sitting on our physiology. So this protein, skeletal muscle lipoprotein lipase, it's an enzyme that breaks down fats. Okay, so it's necessary for breaking down those blood fats, and that enzyme is suppressed after sitting. The breaking down and use of glucose, which is blood sugar, is also reduced, which then elevates your blood sugar level. So again, your muscles aren't working, they're not going to burn that off. They're not going to burn that energy off, and then you end up storing it. Okay, so movement can counteract these effects on our physiology. So even just stretching, standing and stretching, is considered light activity. It increases muscle and joint mobility, it improves your circulation, can relieve stress and tension, which we often hold in our muscles. So if you can kind of relax your muscles and stretch them out, it can alleviate some of that. And it improves mood and energy. Okay, so breaking up your workday and doing, we're going to go through some exercises to do after I talk about all this stuff. So I'm not talking about you're having to do very vigorous activity, it's just light activity. Within 90 seconds of standing up, the muscular and cellular systems that process your blood sugar, triglycerides and cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, which are all mediated by insulin, are activated within 90 seconds of standing up. So again, this doesn't have to take up 10 minutes of your time every time you do it. 2 minutes is all it's going to take. Okay? So these molecular effects are activated simply by carrying your own body weight. So our bodies were meant to be up and moving. They're also responsible for pushing fuel into your cells, those fats and blood sugar, and it'll radically decrease your risk of diabetes and obesity because it's controlling those substances within your blood. So diabetes is basically elevated blood sugar because your body's not regulating it, and it can be for a couple of different reasons, type 1 versus type 2. In this, we're talking about type 2, that your body's not responding to insulin, so you have to kind of pump out more and more insulin. You build a tolerance to your insulin, and then you basically kind of burn your cells out that are your pancreas cells that are producing the insulin. And it's you don't have very good insulin sensitivity, so your blood glucose levels are high. So at the molecular level, your body was designed to keep moving, and it needs that movement in order to really process what we're doing with the rest of our lifestyle. Yeah.
How are you suggesting to do this like every hour or something, every 2 hours, or
Every 30 minutes.
30 minutes?
Yeah.
She's getting there. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. You can use that. Yes, and so remember what that picture of your brain looked like after 20 minutes, and then after 30 minutes, everything starts to really shut down. So 20 to 30 minutes is the recommendation. Ideally, it's every 20. I know for a lot of, it's, well, I just sat back down and I'm working on something and I'm in the flow, so every 30 minutes. but really, it definitely needs to be twice an hour. So again, that enzyme is activated when your muscles are working and moving to control your blood glucose and blood fats. You burn 174 more calories during an afternoon of standing versus sitting. It's not a huge calorie burn. You're not really doing this for the effects of weight loss in that you're burning a whole lot more calories when you stand, but standing maintains a much more stable level of blood sugar versus sitting. And measures of cognitive performance and accuracy are higher during standing, cycling, or walking, so that's those treadmill tests, when you work versus when you're just sitting. And if anyone needs studies to show their employers to say, yes, I'll still be very effective and actually more effective if I'm standing or walking when I work versus sitting, I'm happy to give those to you. During standing, your postural muscles are continually contracting to keep you balanced. Most of us don't just stand still, so there is that kind of weight shifting, moving around, and just that action, kind of like standing marching in place or shifting over to get something, that muscle pump action kind of keeps things moving, keeps things flowing. Yeah, and so when you're sitting, those muscle contractions are absent, and your legs especially, but even in your trunk, most of us aren't moving around a ton when we're sitting and working, whereas when you're standing, there tends to be a lot more shifting and moving around, even just in place. So walking at a rate of 15 minutes per mile, which isn't, you're not like super hoofing it at 15 minutes per mile. A 185-pound person burns 67 calories walking for 10 minutes, and a 125-pound person burns 45. The bad news is, as you lose the weight, the calorie burn goes down because you're not working as hard, because you're not working against so much resistance. But it increases your heart rate, breathing rate, your blood glucose use, circulation, and oxygen consumption. So these are all really good physiological benefits to walking. And if it's, so for 10 minutes, so most of us have, at least one break through the day, so you have your lunch break. So you don't have to spend your entire lunch break exercising. You can go for a 10-minute walk on your lunch break. And if you end up walking around or doing walking meetings, which is something that I'll mention also, if you work in an environment where there are a lot of meetings, if you can convince those coworkers to do a walking meeting, either around the office or around outside near the office, then you're getting in another walk or two. So the good news too is that there are cumulative effects of shorter bouts of exercise throughout the day. So a lot of times people feel that a barrier is that I don't have a half an hour to set aside to exercise. We don't need a half an hour, one chunk at a time. You can do shorter bouts of exercise and you're still going to get the same benefits as if you exercise for that 30 minutes. So 3 bouts of 10 minutes of exercise, they actually regulate, especially if you're sedentary throughout the rest of the day, that does a better job of regulating your blood glucose and cholesterol than one 30-minute session at the end or beginning of your day, because now you're moving through the day. So you're still going to get the cardiovascular benefits that you would get for exercising for a chunk of 30 minutes, plus you're going to get better regulation of your blood physiology because you're moving more.
10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes after I get home, and 10 minutes somewhere
else in there.
Day. That's better than me doing 30 minutes if I'm sitting for the rest of the day.
Yes. Yes. So if you're pretty much stuck and you have to be sitting through the day, taking those periods to move during the day is going to do a better job of regulating you than just one at the end of the day. Now, if you love to do your 30 minutes at the end of the day, and you can also do 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at lunch.
That's even better.
Even better. Exactly. Okay. So if you already do an exercise routine for 30 minutes or 60 minutes somewhere in your day, don't give that up. If it's a trade-off and you have to give it up and you're breaking it up throughout the day, that's better than just once a day. But ideally, you're doing that plus moving throughout your day. So yeah, that's not good. So I should have taken May out because that was like a couple years ago at this point. But so 17,000 Canadian adults, it's in Canada, but 17,000, that's a large number of people. Okay, so that's a good size to power the study. Those who reported the most time standing had a 33% lower risk of dying of any cause over the next 12 years compared to those who stood the least. So that kind of says the same thing, just the reverse, that those who sit the most have higher mortality rates than those who sit the least. Okay, so this is going back to, because sometimes the question arises of, well, you know, with weight loss and control, it's not like you're burning a whole lot more calories. And I've seen that argument against standing workstations. So I had sort of an email argument with someone who was writing in a magazine. Anyway.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is this something you can email us, because I think we're missing?
Yeah, I didn't put some of the more technical ones that I didn't put in, but yes, I can email you the full version. Yeah. Do we have a sign-in sheet? Okay, so if you'll sign in when you're leaving, and make sure that you're email. Obviously, you guys have heard about this. Were you guys emailed? Mm-hmm. Okay, but if you would still put your.
It's on the release.
Oh, it's on the release?
Release form.
There's no email.
There's no email? Oh.
You can just add it.
Yeah, if you would write your email on there, and then I'll make sure you guys get the full. Okay, so a MET, or an MET, your MET level is basically your energy cost. It's a measure of energy cost. And we use MET levels to talk about how vigorous an activity is. So standing in one place is equivalent to 1.3 METs compared to 1 MET for sitting. So 1 MET is basically the amount of energy it takes for you to just be alive. So sitting, the only energy expenditure is what it just takes for your body to be alive, for your body to maintain itself alive. So a 1.3, when you're standing, again, that's not a huge increase over just sitting. Walking at a 3-mile-per-hour pace is a 3.3 MET activity. Jogging is 7. So that's starting to get up into the more vigorous range when you're getting into that 6 and 7 MET activity. So that's just to kind of give you an idea. So again, negligible calorie burn, but it encourages moving around more. So that light activity physiologically is still very important. Yeah, so important for cell, tissue, organ, and system metabolism. Non-exercise activity is crucial throughout the day. Keeps your body in sort of that fat-burning metabolic mode instead of just being alive kind of metabolic mode. And improves blood glucose, cholesterol, and blood pressure regulation. Okay, so compliance, and this is where, because this all sounds well and good, and then it's a matter of implementing and making sure that this is a lifestyle change. So there was a study done where they took participants for 13 weeks, and they received a prompt either from an alarm on their phone or their computer first to stand up. They did every 45 minutes. Again, I'm going to say every 30. But every 45 minutes to stand up and engage in non-purposeful activity. So like stretching or just kind of like walking around, or not necessarily exercise, but just moving around, okay? Every 45 minutes to stand up and just move around for a couple of minutes. So they got used to doing this. This was every day for 13 weeks. They got this prompt every 45 minutes. After 13 weeks, they took the prompt away and told them, just stand up when you feel like it's that time. When employees were exposed to a passive prompt, so meaning just like when they felt like it was time for them to get up, instead of the active prompt, which is that alarm, they were, they were 5 times more likely to actually stand up and move around when they received that alarm versus when they did not.
Okay.
And that was even after 13 weeks of doing it. So the moral of the story is, you've got to set your alarm. Because you get involved in what you're doing, you think that a certain amount of time has passed, but it hasn't, or you just forget, and then you don't end up getting up. And then an hour or two has passed and you haven't moved. Okay. So, my recommendations: sit for no more than 20 minutes at a time. Stand in one position for no more than 8 minutes at a time. And that's because if you're standing for a prolonged period of time very still, then your blood can kind of pool You can get swelling in your limbs, and then they talk about varicose veins, that it puts pressure on your veins if you're just standing still in one place, especially on a hard surface in non-supportive shoes. So you want to make sure that you're wearing something cushiony and that you're standing on a surface that's not too hard, like concrete or cement or tile that has like nothing underneath it. You can always get a pad or a mat to put underneath you, so it gives you a little more cushion. But as long as you're not just standing for more than 8 minutes. So shifting your weight kind of, I mean, something like as simple as this.
Well, I teach once a week, and so it's about 40 minutes.
But just like standing, or are you?
And I can move around, but I can't do what you
Okay.
do. That would be a little distracting because
Well,
I'm visible. I'm not like hidden completely.
Well, that's even better. So if you're
behind
walking
feet.
around, if you're moving around on your feet,
Okay.
that's even better.
Okay.
Are you like
I'll try
behind a
to-
podium?
Yeah.
Can you be away from the podium?
No.
Oh.
Microphone.
Okay,
It's
so
not
just
visible.
then just shift.
Okay.
People can't see what you're doing behind there.
It's not that kind of podium.
Gotcha. It's one of these podiums.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So just shift. Yeah. Exactly.
Don't fall like-
Yes. You can be emphatic and you're like
I know
squatting.
what you're saying because I know when
You
I
have to tell
go
all
to,
the people that you're teaching to stand up
yeah.
and move too.
There
Yes.
you go.
You know?
Yeah.
When I go
Every
to
20 minutes,
move,
promise.
it's like my knees are sore.
Yeah, because they get stiff. Yeah.
But it's good for the audience and the
Yes.
students.
You can have them stand up every 20 minutes. Or every half an hour.
Reach the audience.
Just for 90 seconds. That's all it takes, 90 seconds. And I'm saying 2 minutes. So take a 2-minute moving break at least twice an hour, so every 30 minutes, or move around. And I'm going to show you some stretches that you can do just in place if getting up and walking around isn't really what you're looking for. And set that timer on your phone or on your computer to go off so that you know it's time to get up. And make it annoying so that you can't just like turn it off or like put it over there. Like you have to do with like your alarm
Get up.
clock in the morning. Yeah.
Good to do.
So you have to at least walk over to turn it off before you come back. Okay. Walk down the hall to speak with a coworker instead of calling or emailing. Have walking meetings instead of sitting at a desk, or at least standing meetings, but walking meetings would be even better. Utilize a stand-up workstation if possible. If you can convince your employer, or if you have the funds to get a treadmill or a bicycle workstation, the best. Go for walks during your breaks. So if you have a 30-minute lunch break, just take a 10-minute walk. If you have an hour lunch break, you bump that up to like 15 or 20 minutes to go for a walk. Take the stairs instead of the elevator when possible. Park farther away. Those are the things you kind of hear all the time. Farther away from the building so that you have to walk more getting to and from the office. When you're going shopping, park farther away. If you're going shopping and you're like, all right, I gotta go to Target, but then Fresh Market's over here, walk to Fresh Market and then back instead of driving over there. You know, those kinds of things. And short bouts of exercise throughout the day. Okay, so again, it doesn't have to be that 30, it can be chunked. Okay, so we're going to go through some exercises. Okay, so some exercises to do during your lunch break. If you have a 60-minute lunch break, go for a longer walk if you can. If you have a 30-minute lunch break, maybe just a 10-minute walk. And try to do a 10-minute walk in the morning and then a 10-minute walk later in the day. Stair climbing. So if you have stairs in your office, if you can go between floors, stair climbing is going to be a more vigorous activity than just walking. And when you walk, you want to, I'll take strolling over sitting, but for exercise purposes, you want to push that a little bit and do more of a moderate activity. So if you're going out for a nice brisk walk during your lunch break, you want to walk at a pace where you could, if you're talking with someone, you'd kind of be out of breath, but you could still have the conversation. If you can sing, you're not pushing it enough. But if you are working so hard that you can't talk, you're probably working a little too hard. So that sweet spot is, you can talk and carry on a conversation, but you're breathing hard while you do it. Okay. So you can combine 10 minutes of stair climbing with 10 minutes of brisk walking, and now that's a 20-minute chunk of exercise that can really get your heart rate up, and that's good. And you can break it up. If you're sick of doing the same laps outside, you can do some stairs on one of your 10-minute breaks. Okay, so there are ways that you can work in exercise throughout the day, and really try to encourage your coworkers to do some walking meetings, because it's good for everybody. And again, you saw that picture of after 20 minutes of walking what your brain looks like. So imagine the ideas you're going to come up with when you're having a walking meeting. Okay, is that the, yeah, that was my last one. References if you are interested. I didn't put that on there, but so I will get that information about working from home, and if there's reduced
I
activity.
couldn't remember.
work
I've
from
been
home.
sitting too long and my brain is dead.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll look into that, and yes. So any other questions? Yes.
When I had back surgery, I remember them telling, I forgot the exact numbers, but I think it was like, never sit for more than 20 minutes in a 3-hour period or 4-hour period or something like that. That you should stand or lay down the whole time.
Okay.
You know, so everybody talks about sitting is bad for you, but what if you lay down for a few minutes? I mean, I know that's not conducive at work, but if you're working at home or whatever and you can take a little bit of a break, is that any better than, is there anything from that?
Okay. In terms of physiology, just lying there, you're also not moving around, you're not getting your blood flowing. So physiologically, no. Probably it was like shortly after your back surgery.
Yeah.
So when you look at studies that are looking at pressure and stress and strain on your spinal structures, particularly your lumbar spine, sitting is the highest strain on your lumbar spine. So probably they didn't want you to put that much strain on your lumbar spine after surgery. Lying down there is the least.
Okay. So it was more conditional because
Yes.
of that?
Yes.
Okay.
But if you're working from home or what have you, and if for stress relief or for sleep, if you don't get very good sleep at night, and there's a whole body of literature on sleep hygiene and things that you need to do for sleep, but if you are just like in a fog and it's like I could just pass out at any minute, and getting up and walking, and you're standing, so you've gotten up, you've walked around, and you're still, because that will usually kind of invigorate you. So if that doesn't do it, and you're like, man, I'm just gonna I cannot focus, I'm so tired, and you have the opportunity to lie down for 20 minutes, you should. So, and same thing like for stress relief, like sometimes you need to just kind of shut it off and go lie down for a few minutes and do some deep breathing or do some meditation. There are meditation apps. Are like a nice segue for a plug for next month. Next month, February 22nd, I believe is the date. It's a Thursday. Yes. Dawn Harrison, Roger's wife, who's also a PT here, she's going to give an awesome, because she's done it before, workshop on stress. And so there are exercises you can do lying down for stress relief. So then in that case, that would also be another time that it would be good to just kind of like, I'm stepping away and I'm going to do these exercises or do this meditation lying down to kind of manage my stress. So that's when that would be a good kind of intervention. Yeah, good question.
One of the other things I do to get me up more is I don't keep a trash can in my office.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So if you go, or a shredder or something like that, and it's some,
So I have to get up and go, at least go to the kitchen to throw anything away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there are all
Or
kinds
water.
of, yeah.
I have a jug of water, and it's basically, it can only last about 20 minutes to a half hour because I go through it, then I got to get up.
And
Yeah.
get some more.
Yep. That's another good one. And then because you're drinking so much water, you have to get up and go to the bathroom, which is great.
Yeah.
Light
People-
exercise.
Yeah, light activity. And you're staying hydrated, which is also important for our mental functioning and cellular functioning and everything. You know, a lot of times people don't want to drink a lot of water because then they have to stop what they're doing to go to the bathroom. It's like, that's okay, there are bathrooms for that reason. So, I know it's annoying, but, so yeah, coming up with strategies for your workplace. And if you want to talk about strategies with me, I'm more than happy to do that. You know, for your specific work environment, on ways that you can make sure that you're, aside from setting your timer, but other ways to make sure that you're moving throughout the day and getting up frequently and taking steps and walking around. So And if you're working from home, do the laundry. That's like always the best, because every so often you're gonna have to like stop and change the laundry, and you gotta fold it, and then so you can use household tasks as a way to kind of break up that activity. Not something that's gonna pull you away for 20 minutes or half an hour, but something that you can like do for 5 minutes and then come back. So this way you're up and moving around, kind of breaks it up. So.
I could do the laundry.
Yeah, right. So
Just kidding.
please go home and tell Dawn that I told you you have to do the laundry.
Right.